I want to go through these two events with you guys that are related to Iran. So the first thing that happened is there was a drone strike, an attack on an Iranian Ministry of Defense facility, and the other event is there was an attack on food trucks that were coming in from Iran through Iraq to Syria. So let's go through the first thing, okay? So there, people are saying this was it was the Israelis. Some are saying it's the Americans, and there's a third party I'll show you in a second. But this happened in Isfahan, okay? And there, the Israelis or the Israeli media are saying, well, the damage is very extensive. It was extremely successful, and the Iranians are saying nothing happened. The roof was destroyed or something. It was minimal damage. I'm not here to debate either of these things. I don't care about the extent of the damage because we're going to talk about the principle. We're going to talk about the principle of it. The Israeli position is that, well, of course, Israel should attack Iran, its nuclear facilities, its drone program, its ballistic missile program, because Iran is a threat, right? So apparently, they give themselves the right to do this. And they do the same thing with Syria, right? They bomb Syria. They say, well, we have to bomb Syria because there's Hezbollah in there, and there are Iranians there who are preventing us from bombing Syria, which we illegally occupy. So it's just like reverse aggression. Like Israel wants to bully everyone, but it is defending itself. It's the victim at the same time, right? So yeah, just twisted mentality. The interesting thing is that usually these drone attacks, you don't see that happening. I don't know the last time this ever happened in Iran. I can't think of a drone attack like this, because usually you have the Israelis assassinating a nuclear scientist or blowing up a nuclear facility or sabotaging it. But I don't remember anything like this, because this form of attack is usually what happened in Isfahan. This form of attack is usually something Iran and the resistance do, right? When I say resistance, I'm saying Iran, PMU, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas. I'm speaking generally, but actually, the drone attacks, you can always see this happen on American bases in Syria and Iraq. So it's more Hashd al-Sha'bi in Syria and Iran, right? So this is something the resistance uses. So it's interesting to see that used against the Iranians inside Iran. And honestly, man, this is like a declaration of war, because I'll tell you something. You can say all you want. Oh, well, they were building drones in this plant. Yeah, so what? Imagine if the Iranians, they went and bombed some munitions factory inside of the United States or some Israeli munitions factory. They fucking they declare war in response and start they go nuts, right? They would never tolerate this. So why is Israel allowed to do this? I forget their reasoning. They want to claim it's self-defense. They don't offer any case. They don't make a case at the UN. They don't say anything. They just bomb and shut up, right? And then they let the media justify it for them. So this is like an act of war, first of all. The other thing I want to tell you is that the Ukrainians are also saying they have something to do with this, apparently. And you can see this all over the place. Because the Zelensky, so he's the Ukrainian president, his advisor, look what he wrote on Twitter, okay? He was mocking what happened. He said that, so again, this is January 29th. He's saying that war logic is inexorable and murderous. Yeah, okay, blah, blah, blah. So he's basically saying that there's panic in the Russian Federation. And then he says, explosive night in Iran, drone and missile production, oil refineries. Ukraine did warn you, right? So what does that mean? Ukraine did warn you. So is he saying Ukraine has something to do with it? Because remember, Iran is providing the Russians with drones to use in Ukraine. Okay, and people were laughing and saying, "Oh, well, they must be really crappy because Russia doesn't have the means to build any of its own. It has to turn to Iran." And now they're not fucking laughing anymore, because turns out those drones are very, very good. So what is he saying here? Is he implying that Ukraine did it or got someone to hit that drone plant or this MOD Ministry of Defense facility for them? Because let me explain what this means. If this is okay, right? If it's okay for Ukraine to go and bomb Iran for helping Russia, well, you're opening a can of worms now, because you're basically saying, well, then Russia is justified to bomb Germany or bomb the UK or bomb the United States or bomb any country that's helping Ukraine. Like that's his mentality here, right? That's his logic. If you help my enemy, then you become my enemy, right? And I'm going to attack you. Again, I'm not saying that Ukraine had something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe he's just gloating and he's just running his mouth on Twitter. Yeah, whatever. But I'm just saying that you know, rationalizing this is it opens a can of worms, because when you start doing these things, the rest of the world is going to look at that and say, well, you know what? Why don't we do that, right? Why don't we copy you, since you're creating this Wild West? Again, like I said, it opens a can of worms. At the same time, there was this attack, as I told you, on the Syria-Iraq border. This was also reportedly Israel. Again, you know, the Israelis, they don't bother commenting, but basically they blew up some food trucks, and I mean, well done, right? Well done, because they did the same thing. I remember in Latakia, in the port there, and we you know, we went through the pictures. It was like 3-in-1 Nescafe coffee, and you know, basically just like powder coffee in a bunch of containers. And I don't really care for the justification, because, you know, whether it's actually food or it's weapons, so what? It's none of your business. Look at the French, look at the Dutch, look at the Polish, you know, look at the British, the Americans, everyone, you know, the Germans, they're all giving weapons to Ukraine, and that's fine, right? So why is it not okay for Iran to give Syria weapons? Why aren't they allowed to do that? Why not? You know, Syria is occupied by Israel. Why is Syria not allowed to get weapons from Iran? Because NATO is doing that with Ukraine, right? Where's the difference? And Syria's been occupied for way longer. So once again, if you want to argue who has a stronger case, it's Syria, without a doubt. The Palestinians, same thing. They have a very, very strong case for people to send them weapons, right? Like under your own logic. And actually, it's not just a question of NATO's logic. It's you know, it's very clear in international law. They have a right to armed struggle. So, you know, why is it okay for the Israelis and the Americans to constantly bomb Iran for helping the resistance, but it's okay for them to give weapons to Ukraine? Like you see how disgusting the hypocrisy is. And even when they bomb, these are refrigerated trucks that they bombed, right? So, you know, I'm trying to understand the military value or the strategic value of bombing refrigerated trucks. I guess it makes sense if your strategy is to, you know, just make Syrians starve, which is kind of like, you know, it's par for the course, because remember, the Israelis, 1/3 of their drinking water comes from Syria, from the Golan Heights, which they're illegally occupying. So they don't mind stealing water from Syria. They don't mind destroying Syrian infrastructure. You know, this is normal now. Like they've been doing this for 10 years now. All of these countries, with Israel's help, and Israel, of course, like I said, since '67 they're occupying Syria. So yeah, you know, this is par for the course. They'll say it's weapons because they think that somehow justifies it. It doesn't. It doesn't. So any way you look at this, whether it's food or weapons, they have no right to be doing this. And just think how sick this is. You know, they target these food trucks. They even targeted oil. You remember how there were Iranian tankers bringing oil to Lebanon, which was distributed through Hezbollah, and then they were bringing oil to Syria, right? And what is that oil used for? It's just fuel used for electricity, you know, used for generators. People are dying for fuel because of the war, because of the whole crisis, right? And they have no problem targeting that. There's a whole Cold War in this region because of the tankers war, as I like to call it, right? And I did several episodes for TV about that, about this tankers war. You know, the Israelis would you know, they'd blow up a ship bringing oil to Syria, and then in response, the Iranians would hit an Israeli ship. So, yeah, my point is that this is normal. They don't have, you know, there's no taboo for them. They don't give a shit. It's food, it's weapons. They're going to bomb it just because it's Iranian and going to Syria. That's it. That's a reason enough for them. That's the inhumanity of it. Like, they have no problem just messing with people's food and their infrastructure. Yeah, whatever. You know, they always have a justification for it, apparently. But I'm interested to know if Ukraine had anything to do with it. I mean, again, you know, Ukraine is like, how much could they have to do with it. With Nord Stream 2, I don't think it was just the Ukrainians. I think obviously they could have proposed it. Maybe they didn't. But at the end of the day, the ones who actually have the means to do this, it's the UK and the US. And when we talk about what happened now in Iran and the Iranian trucks on the Iraq-Syria border, the Ukrainians don't have the means to do this, right? So it's probably the Americans or the Israelis. Now you have to consider that the Israelis officially so far, they've refused to take a side really between Russia and Ukraine, and this makes sense because the Israelis, a lot of Israelis are Ukrainian Jews or Russian Jews. Okay, so Israel wants to have good ties with both of them, and it's weird. It's very awkward because Russia is helping Syria, but Israel is bombing Syria. But Israel wants to have good ties with Russia. Russia's in Ukraine, but Israel doesn't want to upset the Russians by siding with Ukraine, and doesn't want to upset Ukraine by siding with the Russians. Yeah, international relations is very funny. My point is, though, would the Israelis go through all the trouble of bombing Iran just for the sake of pleasing the Ukrainians? I don't know. I don't think so. So some people have been speculating maybe it's the Americans who did that. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't see a big difference between the two, but still, it's worth considering. Another thought, that's worth reflecting on. I've noticed in the past that every time something happens with the Palestinians, there's like an operation or an act of resistance, the Israelis, they kind of get mad and then they go and mess with the Iranians. They try to like send a message. And you really have to understand this Cold War that I'm talking about. It's not just the tankers. They send messages to each other with attacks and bombings. So, the Palestinians will do something that the Israelis don't like. And then in response, the Israelis will go and bomb Syria. Or they'll go and bomb something, of importance to the Iranians, whether it's Iranians who are helping the Syrians, or it could be Hashd al-Sha'bi. Remember in response, Iran actually went and took out this Mossad headquarters in Kurdistan, right? Or let's say the Kurdish part of Iraq, or they call it autonomous Kurdistan region in Iraq. So it's back and forth all the time. So some might be speculating that after what happened in Jerusalem with this guy who shot 7 Israeli settlers, that the Israelis maybe were responding to Iran. But I don't know if this makes sense because we were, the consensus is that Khairi Alqam, the guy who killed 7 Israeli settlers, was acting alone. He didn't have anything to do with Iran. He didn't have anything to do with Fatah or Hamas or PIJ or anyone, right? And it speaks to the point that I was making earlier, where these people are just, what do they have in common? All these young men, they're sick of occupation. That's it. They don't need to be in any group. They don't need to have any connection to anyone. That is the real reason. It's right there in front of you. You don't need to look any further. So I don't know about that, whether those two can be connected, but it's just food for thought. I think this is just, the Israelis and Americans doing their usual shit against Iran, whether it's in Syria or it's in Iraq or it's this time literally inside Iran. But, again, the food trucks, just to show you on the map, like this is in Abu Kamal, which is very, very strategic point, right? It's right on the border. And they say, well, these were terrorist trucks because this area is controlled by Hezbollah. Okay, let's entertain them for a minute. Let's say it really is controlled by Hezbollah. So fucking what? Hezbollah have the right to be in there as, at the invitation of the Syrian government. Is this Israel? Is this Washington, D.C.? Did anyone fucking ask your opinion? Wait, so what? Again, it's like they just come up with reasons that people will swallow when they're watching TV. Oh, Hezbollah, that sounds Arabic. They must be terrorists. It's so dumb. Like this sheep mentality, man. It's so it's so childish and primitive. So, whatever they want to say, I'm sorry, but like a convoy of food trucks or even weapons, where's the taboo? Where's the taboo? Every single day we're talking about, we'll put weapons for Ukraine, weapons for Ukraine. Okay, so weapons for the Palestinians maybe, no? Right? Weapons for the Syrians maybe, no? I don't know. Fair is fair, right? This is what happened. And I can guarantee you there's going to be a response from the Iranians just because of the dynamic of this Cold War that I'm talking about, right? It's going to come in one form or another. That's how it's been going on for years and years now. I should specify though, I meant the resistance. I know a lot of people like to say, well, it's you have, you know, these like, you know, these hands in Iran that are controlling everyone else. No, it doesn't work like that. There's no leader inside this resistance. It's you know, as varied as Venezuela to, you know, Hezbollah to Syria, Yemen. You know, if you look at it from a religious point of view or political point of view, all these entities have nothing to do with each other. You know, they have nothing in common except they have a will to, you know, to fight for the global south and to kick out invaders, colonizers, and to fight against sanctions. That's the only thing they have in common, right? You know, when I say the resistance, of course, I'm not talking about Venezuela in this case. I mean more, you know, Hashd al-Shabi, so PMU, or Syria, or you know, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran. I'm talking obviously about the Levant and Middle East in this sense, because they want to make they want you to think like it's some entity that's controlled by Tehran. It's just not. It doesn't work that way. You know, maybe NATO works that way, right? Where the United States tells other people what to do. This is not the same. This is not NATO.